But I'm always fascinated by, we think it's like I believe this. The whole idea of an athlete guaranteeing a win that we make a big deal of is pretty much the dumbest thing we can ever make a big deal. Why? Because there is not a locker room you ever walk into where the opposing team, no matter how big the underdog, thinks they're going to win. Right? That's really the job of the coaches or whatever, is you convince yourself like, oh, we're going to win this game. Everybody thinks they're going to win. How do I know that? Well, because the way an athlete views himself is, people think parents are the only ones that view their kid as way better than they are. Well, some of it is true, but a lot of it is just the athlete themselves. Like, we in order to be great, you have to have a certain level of arrogance, self-confidence, and belief in self. Karl Anthony-Towns, really good player, right? Is that a fair way of...
Yep.
Right? You wouldn't say great. You wouldn't say bum. He's a really good player. Here's Karl Anthony-Towns on Patrick Beverley's podcast talking about his legacy.
I feel like when my time's up and I retire and I put the shoes up, I feel like there's going to be people who are going to say, that I changed the game. And I'm going to be very appreciative of that. Everything's up for stipulation. And you know what I like to say is that no matter when this is all over, that there's going to be kids coming up saying that they're going to be able to play a different way because I played in NBA and did it a different way.
Okay, is it because... Now, Karl Anthony-Towns, how many years do you think he's been in the NBA? Buyer, this would be a good one for you. How many years do you think he's been in? Like, just take a guess.
7.
It's really good. He's actually been in the NBA 8 years. But, I mean, you're very, very close, right? 8 years.
Yeah, that's right.
So, 8 years he's played in the NBA. Do you think most people would know he played in the NBA 8 years? They know Karl Anthony-Towns. I think they know him because of the moniker Cat more than anything else.
Yep.
Right? Like, that's probably the best thing he has going for him, is that it's Karl Anthony-Towns and he's called Cat. And that's a differentiator.
And the horrible tragedy during the pandemic. That's what I associate him with.
Yeah, well, he was also the best player on a Kentucky undefeated team. That's why I did the math. I did 2015. Then I'm like, 13 minus 2016, but I forgot to add the 0 season. Anyway, but he was also the number 1 overall pick from a Kentucky team that was, 2 games away from making history.
Yeah, the only Kentucky team to finish the regular season undefeated. I was there. I called the last game that beat Florida at home. And he was beloved at Kentucky because he's actually really bright. And he's a guy who, I remember I did a game like I can't remember who they played, like Ole Miss that same year. And I was, all the staff guys were like, dude, Cat will be at school tomorrow. Like, he'll go to class tomorrow. I was like, no way. And I remember getting a cell phone snapshot of, like, he was walking on campus. Like, but that one, the athletes that go to class, and I know most of them take stuff online, that reminds me of the old Chris Rock thing about dads that take care of their kids. Right?
Doing the minimal,
that's
doing
what
the
you're
expected.
supposed to do, right?
Yeah.
But
he pays his child support.
But the idea that Karl Anthony-Towns really believes, that he has changed basketball. And I'm guessing it's because of the volume of three-point shots he takes, right? Is that maybe the argument?
I have no idea what he's referring to.
But in what world does this, and this, by the way, is the problem with these types of podcasts? It's like the LeBron James barbershop, or it's called the Shop podcast, where the idea of a barbershop conversation is dudes can say outlandish things, but then somebody goes, you're full of you-know-what, right?
Yes.
The fact that Patrick Beverley didn't go like, what are you talking about? We won one playoff game. You played in 29 games this year, right? What? Or just a simple follow-up of how? Well, I changed the game. How? Give me one thing you've done that is different than what anybody else has done. That will be, because I could tell you, like the step-back jump shot, right? That used to be called the Kiki, because Kiki Vandeweghe was the first one to really, really do it. A reverse pivot in the low post. That's called the Sigma move. Jack Sigma's move. Right? Now people do what's called the rondo, which is they'll drive to the basket, like say you're driving with your right hand, okay, and you got a guy on your shoulder. You hold out the ball with your left hand, only to spin back into a fadeaway. That's known as the rondo, right? That's the rondo move. So there are moves that are named after him. There's no Karl Anthony-Towns move. There's no differentiator as a shot or as a style of play. Again, and I'm not sitting here telling you he stinks because his team hasn't won anything. But he believes what he's saying, and then he goes on a podcast, and I'm sure on social media and on regular media he's going to get clowned. But within, somebody say something. Somebody stop him because he put down that headset thinking, yep, I told people I changed the game, and sure enough I did. No, you haven't done anything different.
Nobody talks like that either. What other NBA player is saying that?
Like Steph Curry probably wouldn't say that, and he did change the game.
Yeah. It's to me, it's so far out there of just, because no one is having that sort of conversation, and it's not that Cat's the first and there are other that are going to follow. It's just a weird, just who talks like that? Nobody really talks like that.
And that, by the way, is one of those. If he's traded in the offseason, you'll nod your head and go yeah, of course, right? Not because it's toxic, just because it's freaking weird.
And I didn't mean to make a joke by saying no one talks like that. This also from a guy that if you go on TikTok or social media, will see clip after clip of a guy who has two different ways of talking. He's got his real way of talking, which is a higher pitch,
like that, like we just played.
And then if he's talking to the sideline reporter after the game, he'll be like, "Yeah, we just had to get buckets." His voice is 3 octaves lower. It's a thing on social media. If you go to TikTok, TikTok is a different site. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good
TikTok.
one. Japan came up with TikTok.
And you probably type in Karl Anthony-Towns. There will be more making fun of his voice than any of the highlights that he thinks could change the game.
Do you think when he said, maybe when he was saying, we got to give him the benefit of the doubt here. When he said, when he said change the game, do you think he meant that when it's all said and done, he wants to be known as the guy that when you came across him on your TV set, you changed the game? You went to the other game
to see if there was something else on maybe NBA TV.
It's possible. It's very, very possible. Can I take one more shot though at social media? Why not? It's my show, right? It's Doug Gottlieb Show, Fox Sports Radio. We're live at the U.S. Open. We'll talk about the U.S. Open in a second. Sam Farmer is going to join us. He covers all sports for the LA Times and the NFL as well. I've seen this Jokic saying basketball is not the number one thing in my life, right? That I have all this other stuff. And you'll get people, and I've seen this and I'm sure it'll be at some point ESPN media, maybe Fox Sports 1 media, be like, well, you guys came at Kyrie Irving, and you don't say anything about Jokic. Right? Because Kyrie Irving, he said, he's more than just a basketball player. Are you kidding me? If you don't understand the difference there. And, by the way, the perfect example of Jokic kind of talking out his rectum the past couple of days was today at the parade where he's like, this is the greatest day of my life. Yeah. Clearly totally in on the parade, right? And, no, basketball may not be the number one thing now. It's the offseason. He's got his family. He's got his horses or whatever. But it's pretty obvious if you look at his body and his game, he works on it. Now, I'm not saying Kyrie doesn't work on his game and he doesn't love basketball. But everything Kyrie Irving does is divisive. Right? Mm-hmm. Everything he does is divisive. And that is only part of the argument of his divisiveness, yes.
One point I want to bring up, and it's a question. I'm not making a comment. We clowned on Jimmy Butler by saying, I don't want to go to a Hall of Fame ceremony. But we didn't clown on Jokic being like, I got to go to a parade. Is it apples to oranges?
Apples to oranges.
I think it's racism, Dan.
Okay.
It's the Hall of Fame. And by the way, he did show up for the parade.
Yes,
and
he did.
Jimmy Butler will be there for the Hall of Fame.
I don't care about either enough to have a strong opinion. So,
well, I think the greatest thing would be if you don't care, then that's fine. We won't put you in. That's okay. It's the incredible honor. It's like when you throw a dinner for a guy, and then he no shows on you. We're going to honor you at this dinner. I don't really care. We're throwing a dinner in your honor. Your honor. I don't know. Dudes are weird.